Hi everyone, my name is Danny Moss and I'm a Professional Development Staff Officer with the ATA, and I want to welcome you to this series of PD modules, Growing into STEM. This first module is called STEM Education to Save the World, and it gives an overview of what STEM education is and why it could quite literally save us all. Not bad, hey? Look, we're all in a very difficult time right now in our history, and we could all use a little bit of hope and positivity. And in addition to STEM education activities being really beneficial to our students and potentially the future of our world, it can also bring you hope and joy as an educator. Okay, we're looking at how cross-disciplinary activities involving science, technology, engineering, math, along with any other subject areas, can be used to solve problems and design solutions. Okay. And in this PD series, I'm going to focus on doing those activities through an environmental lens and focusing on one particular electronics device, this little guy, the BBC Microbit. What a $35 computer. It can be programmed. Super fun. There are several modules in this PD series, and while they are designed sequentially, I do invite you to jump around these modules as you need to. So this module provides an introduction to understanding what STEM education is and uncovers the many benefits this type of learning can have on your students, on you, and our world in general. In the subsequent modules, we'll focus on one of the many ways to get started with STEM activities, and we'll be focusing on my current favorite device, the BBC Microbit computer. As I mentioned, it's a $35 computer, very easy to program. We're going to get started with it. You don't have to have any knowledge whatsoever about this device or how to code it. And I promise we're going to go really slowly. Okay. We'll also look at follow-up activities you can do in subsequent modules that can go even deeper into that green STEM type activities with your students using the microbit. So it's up to you if you want to just stick with some introductory stuff or just see the many different ways you can take this even further over time. Okay. As part of this PD series, we'll also talk to one of Alberta's premier education experts in the area of STEM, Amanda Green, in a short interview where I interview her about her journey as a STEM educator, and she gives some great advice on kind of where to get started. So let's get started. So here's some context for you to set the table on STEM education. So Moderna and many other companies have been using a STEM approach in their work for many years as they develop a variety of vaccines. And they had a very good basis of knowledge for developing the mRNA vaccines we've heard so much about. Now on January 11th, 2020, the Chinese government released the genetic sequence for the COVID-19 coronavirus. Now, from there, it took Moderna only 2 days to design their vaccine sequence that many of us are using. Isn't that incredible? It was through STEM skills, integrating science and technology, engineering, and mathematical thinking that really led to this breakthrough, which, as we know, has saved countless lives. So aside from the pandemic, we have major environmental problems to solve as a society. You know, that can feel really scary and powerless. And for some, it just feels like another weight on our shoulders. But you know, it doesn't have to. Our students are ready for this. They want to learn about the environment and ways we can make it better. And here's an article, a screenshot from an article posted just a few weeks ago from the time I'm recording this. And as you can see, students really do want more environmental education. So what I'm hoping you'll see here through this series is that STEM really can help increase these skills and attitude that will really help save the world. Skills in technology, computational thinking, science, math. We can leverage these activities as well to develop skills across other subject areas too. Writing, communication, collaboration, all our other subject areas too. It can provide an awareness of global issues and their solutions if you choose to kind of focus on that environmental piece, which is what I'm suggesting. And you know what? What they've found is as you start to solve problems and design solutions, you begin to really focus on looking at the fine details and developing an awareness of your own needs and your environment along with the needs of other people. Okay? And this can really lead to some great dispositions within students, such as that I can do it attitude, empathy, advocating for better, the value of working collectively, and doing your part as a citizen, and more. Okay. Now, just as important as a teacher, integrating these activities can feel very rewarding and energizing. And we can't underscore the benefits that you as an educator may experience just as much as students do. So let's take a closer look at what STEM education means and how teachers are organized. So we know that the S, T, E, and M in the word STEM refers to science, technology, engineering, and math, but it doesn't mean just doing more of those subject areas, right? And really, when you think about what is, some people might wonder, what does engineering have to do with most grade levels? So what it means is that this is sort of an interdisciplinary approach. It kind of removes the barriers separating these four areas. So in other words, you're not just doing more math or more science or more technology or designing things, right? It can involve, as you do these activities, it can involve integrating two or more of these four disciplines or one even with additional subject area outcomes in any other subject, art, language arts, social studies, any other subject area as well. So we have within this kind of approach scientific inquiry. Okay, we've got the use of technology in some way, and there are so many different ways that technology can be used: coding, robotics, electronics, data gathering, and anything else with technology. We've got the sort of the engineering design process, right? And as well as some element of mathematical thinking. And so it's more of an approach to learning than sort of a specific recipe, which I think you'll find as you get more involved in this. So how do teachers integrate STEM? Well, in this 2013 book, STEM Lesson Essentials, which, by the way, you can sign out for free at the ATA library, they mention 4 increasing levels of integration. Now, when you look at that, you can see that the levels get more complex, okay, starting off with a disciplinary approach within kind of one of those disciplines, and then moving to a higher and higher level of integration over time. It may involve real-world problems, pulling outcomes from a number of different subject areas. Now, look, don't feel like you as an educator have to get to the highest level of integration, okay? It can be very intimidating for people when they look at something like this thinking, oh man, how am I going to do this? Just take the elements of any of these things that fit with kind of your educational beliefs and that work with you. And that may grow or change over time, right? A lot of teachers get intimidated when they see this graphic because they feel like they won't ever kind of be good enough. So I'm here to tell you that any level of involvement is better than nothing, and it's really easy to get started. I promise. So there are lots of different ways to manage how you integrate STEM into your classroom, and each way can require different amounts of time. Subject area integration, okay? So it can start on the one end, on the left side there. You can start it as a club. Some schools will just start a coding club or a robotics or a maker club or a STEM club where they participate in different activities at lunchtime or recess, after school, that kind of thing, where there really isn't pressure to tie specifically to subject area outcomes. It's just sort of seen as an add-on or a benefit, added benefit for students, okay? Now, some teachers will incorporate a STEM challenge into their timetable from time to time, okay, which offers connections to specific curriculum outcomes. Now, those may or may not be assessed all the time. And again, it may just be sort of intermittently done. Now, as you kind of move along that continuum of levels of integration, it could, for some teachers, it involves teachers establishing defined curricular outcomes from one or more subject areas. So maybe there's in that STEM lesson integration, you're looking for outcomes that connect to multiple programs of study. And that can also build in a bit more time for you to do it. And so depending on the length of these activities, the teacher may reorganize the timetable, if they can do it, to block enough time in a day or two to complete this lesson. Now, the current Alberta Science curriculum already has some units that involve engineering design elements, so it's one of the more common ways that teachers start or kind of develop their frame of reference and understanding about STEM. Now, adding a technology or literacy element to a deliberate connection to math outcomes or numeracy progressions is also quite common. So STEM projects, if you can see on the far right side there, can take multiple days, even weeks, and it may even involve a more deliberate attempt by the teacher to integrate many more subject area outcomes within that project, even beyond the STEM subjects, such as literacy elements, books, writing, other forms of communication, art, social studies, health and wellness, lots of other subject areas, okay? Now, at the secondary level, where it may be difficult for teachers to teach different subjects, in some cases we see multidisciplinary teams where teachers are working together to kind of co-plan a project. So it might involve language arts and writing a script, and it maybe involves, a technology option or sort of a STEM option where different pieces of work, possibly art. I've seen lots of other subject areas integrated even at the secondary level where teachers, it takes a little more organization to do this, but it can be done. And in some cases, it's a champion teacher that kind of will create an entire STEM option. And if you hear the interview with Amanda Green as part of this series, that's what she's doing this year. And so they do these types of STEM activities for the entire option class at the secondary level. So as you can imagine, the type of STEM activity you choose obviously requires different amounts of time and planning. It's very easy to get started at the lower ends of time and expertise that's involved and subject to integration. And depending on kind of where it goes for you, you may see that increase over time and you may not. And it's wherever you're at or wherever you plan to go is okay. All right, so I think it's really important to ask the question, why? Okay, your time in schools is precious, and it's really important to ask, well, why would I use any of that precious time to involve my students in STEM activities? Well, for this particular session, I want to focus on three particular areas that we've seen some tremendous outcomes in terms of why. Okay, computational thinking, empowerment for students, and hope. So let's start with computational thinking. So what do we mean by computational thinking? Well, we see this set of thinking skills a lot when we think about coding and robotics, okay? But it doesn't have to, and I'll give you a real example in real life in a minute. But basically what we're talking about when we talk about computational thinking, there's a few distinct skills, and here's what many definitions include. One is decomposition, where you're kind of breaking down a big problem, a complex problem, into smaller specific components, okay? And then kind of biting them off one at a time. Now, pattern recognition and abstraction involve noticing the fine details of what needs to be done to solve that problem, okay? And the pattern involved in those details. Now, algorithms involve sort of designing almost like a recipe or a procedure for solving that complex problem, okay? Now, again, when we get into some microbit coding activities in the next modules, I'd like you to try to notice these computational thinking skills, okay? Decomposition, pattern recognition and abstraction, as well as development of algorithms. But for now, let's take a look at a real world example. For example, let's say you're an elementary teacher and you want to get your students involved in organizing your classroom library. Okay, let's say you want to have a functioning classroom library where students can kind of get books they need when they need it. Okay, first they break down that large task into smaller ones, like what materials do we need? How should this classroom library be organized? How do our classmates need to use this library as to flow through the process in the most efficient way? Okay, they notice and they plan for those details of people's common needs and functions in a class library, and then they put together sort of an algorithm or a plan to kind of make that classroom library function smoothly and efficiently. So it's somewhat of a cyclical process where they make tweaks and adjustments regularly to kind of improve that solution over time. And I mean, back to the technology examples, we see this all the time, right? We're constantly getting smartphone app updates on our phones. And certainly when it comes to coding and programmers, they're constantly striving to make the most effective solutions in the most efficient ways possible. So it doesn't have to be with technology. We see these computational skills applying to real life as well. But that's just an example to kind of break down what we're talking about with computational thinking. So some really great thinking skills can be developed through doing these STEM activities. So let's talk a little bit about the second major outcome that I want to focus on, and that is one of empowerment for students, possibly for you too as an educator. So Harvard studied makerspaces and STEM programs through the Agency by Design project. It was done several years ago, and they eventually wrote a book. You can see a little screenshot of the book there, Maker-Centered Learning. But they've got a great website, agencybydesign.org as well. And what they noticed was fascinating. What they noticed a tremendous outcome related to student empowerment and character building. Okay, students engaging in these types of activities developed a sense of agency and empowerment in their world, where they actually saw themselves as capable of tackling challenges. Now let's take a closer look at that. Okay. All right, so in a STEM or maker challenge, the process for students involves solving hard problems and overcoming inevitable roadblocks and challenges. And by the end, they succeed and they feel good. All right. Now, as they continue to tackle these kind of STEM activities in their learning, these roadblocks and challenges to overcome just kind of become part of the regular process. Through these challenges, they work together as classmates, collaboratively. They focus on the specific needs of the challenge, and they do whatever they can as they design a solution. Okay? Over and over again, this process of investigating, collaborative problem solving, and successful outcomes for themselves and others gets kind of ingrained in them. Okay. And Harvard saw this aptitude and growth in character in the students so frequently that they gave it a name, and they called it maker empowerment. Now, with this, students saw themselves as capable of overcoming challenges and their own problems and the problems of others. So what's more, Harvard noticed that this sense of agency and confidence transcended not only into other areas of their schooling, but other areas of their lives. Students were feeling more resilient and confident, and they noticed this sense of agency And students have more of that I can do this attitude. And what's really exciting for me was it just wasn't just students who were traditionally successful in school that developed this maker empowerment, it was all students. So how exciting is that? And I'm really hoping that you develop somewhat of a sense of agency and empowerment with the microbit challenges by the end of this PD series. There's one more outcome to STEM education that I truly believe exists, and that is one of hope. Okay, as we've talked about, there are many challenges facing the world right now, and these types of green STEM programs really provide a more informed and better equipped society to overcome these challenges. Every single activity that you and your students do, it's one more foundational building block to build that knowledge and the skills and the attitudes that are required to kind of meet these goals. Really, in some small part, you are helping, honestly, you are helping to change our world for the better. Here's an example from the real world. You may have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. This is an island of floating plastic waste that is collected in the ocean. It is incredibly massive, like 1.6 million square kilometers. Okay. Well, students from the University of San Diego designed Fred, the floating robot for eliminating debris. It's solar powered. It swims through the water, picking up debris on a conveyor belt. And I mean, where did these students start? They used STEM skills that started right at the beginning where we are right now, and they built their knowledge and skills over time, bit by bit. And look, Fred isn't just a dream, like it's real. Here's a screenshot from a YouTube video. I'll put the link in the description here if you're curious. This is a small prototype that was developed by the University of San Diego. And after a few, it's about the size of a golf cart. And after a few more iterations, they plan to build a much huger, larger, kind of a catamaran-sized version to tackle the Pacific garbage patch. And that's just one of many dozens of projects that real people are designing right now. And that's just for one issue in the environment right now. And it can start very simple and with inexpensive tools. This is a microbit, the one I showed you before. It's a screenshot of a microbit connected with a plant in soil and a little program coded onto it very easily that can detect the moisture level of the soil so that you can know when it needs more water. Okay, and you would not believe how easy it is to get started with stuff like this, and very, very inexpensive as well. And it's a lot of fun as well. So here's a really important aspect of this kind of green STEM framework is that it's built within this framework is the will to do good things through these problem-solving activities, right? How can I understand and help myself or my school or my community, my world through using science, technology, engineering, and math, right? That's what it's all about. Now here's a screenshot. It's a website, goodnet.org. There are lots of examples of where these STEM solutions are doing good for the world. And it feels great to be involved in stuff like this with students. So with that in mind, it's my hope that you'll consider opening your door to these types of activities with your students in any small or large way, if you're not already. And it can start right now. And the other activities in this module can help you really get started with using the microbit device. In fact, you don't even need a microbit to take part in some of the early activities, as you'll see. And it's really fun and easy, and it can have a huge impact on your students and on you as an educator. So while some of our students doing these activities may go on to some STEM careers, that's Probably going to be a very small number, and it's really not the reason we're doing this, okay? What we're really doing here through this is we are building the skills within all our students, the skills, the attitudes, to be able to advocate for these types of green STEM solutions in their future, right? And it can start today. And I truly hope you'll join me in these PD modules to kind of follow and to kind of grow your skills and knowledge. And I just want to thank you for watching this opening module.